I'm Scott Cuthbert, CEO and co-founder of Safeopedia,
And I'm Gaben Carnachon, Vice President of BBL Safety.
and we're here with Cam Stevens for another episode of Safeonomics. And so, Cam, if you're not on LinkedIn, maybe you don't know Cam, but if you are, you've probably seen his travels as of the last few years. So we just thought we would kick it over to Cam to kind of give us an introduction and a little background of his journey over the last few years. So, Cam, do you want
Thanks,
to?
lads.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Cam Stevens, based in Perth, Western Australia. I call myself the trusted voice of safety tech and digital safety transformation. Uh, that came about by, starting my career. Well, I first started as a chef, but that didn't last too long. I moved to become a physical therapist early in my career, and then transitioned my way through health and safety professional roles, traveling all over the world, working in places as remote as the jungles of Papua New Guinea and up in the North Slope of Alaska. And in the last 5 to 6 years or so, I've been working predominantly exploring emerging technologies and how they impact and can improve the design of work and therefore the safety of work. And as of May this year, I've moved full-time into building my own consultancy practice that supports organizations to explore that world, that intersection of safety and technology, to try and improve the way that they work and improve health and safety outcomes along the way.
Yeah, it's an exciting exciting journey, and obviously from the different professions into safety. But how did you kind of latch on to the technology side of safety? What was the catalyst for that?
The first catalyst was a major F up in a in a technology deployment. I was asked to support a tech deployment. It was a global enterprise software deployment, which we were trying to put onto the BlackBerry device. So we were trying to have a mobility forward strategy to help frontline workers to access work order information on the BlackBerry interface. And it was just a complete disaster. So it all made a lot of sense on paper, but the execution and the user interface and the 50 clicks that it took to actually get the result that we were hoping for was super frustrating, very, very time consuming, cost a lot of money for the business. And I naively was part of that. And I kind of said to myself, I wouldn't do that again. Part of the reason why I was culpable was I didn't really understand the basics of, or the fundamental basics of what was needed to be successful from a technology perspective. And I also didn't understand just how much of a magnitude of a human-centered change was part of technology deployment. So very early in my career, I identified that health and safety professionals, practitioners have a significant role to play when it comes to tech solutions. And you can't decouple technology from the way that we design work. Technology is embedded and kind of deeply embedded into everything that we do. So to me, it felt natural that I needed to explore that world more to determine what role I could play to shape better outcomes.
I think that's so important too, that you realized that there was that big gap between how it looks on paper to maybe the people that are developing the tech itself and then the actual end users. And I feel like there's so much of that that's missing. I feel like I fall into this sometimes where I can design a spreadsheet or some sort of a program that would look phenomenal and it works great in my head, and then I realize, wait a second, okay, let's think about the people that are actually using this. The moment I pull a spreadsheet up and someone says, "Oh, what do all the little boxes mean?" I'm like, "Okay, we have." I have to recenter the expectations here as to what I'm working with, and I feel like that's where a lot of tech companies will miss that mark when they don't understand how the work is actually being done, or they misunderstand it. And so then you're right. Then it becomes this nasty cycle of putting all of this effort and this time and money into developing some piece of technology, and then it never gets implemented. because people that were working on it don't understand how to use it, and then what could have been a good idea is really just canned after that point because people weren't using it, when really it's the matter of translating the tech to the work and vice versa that is the issue.
Yeah, and worse than it not being used is it being used and it causing psychological harm.
Oh, geez,
so
yes.
Psych health and safety risk is inherent in technology solution design. Again, another reason why it's critically important for health and safety practitioners, professionals to be involved, because we can look at the way that the design of that solution could potentially impact cognitive load, increase stress, poor user experience, therefore frustration. It could change the communication dynamics. Like, we have a role to play, and I don't think we realize as much of the role that we can play, and that understanding work and that difference between work as imagined and work as done. A lot of people really getting engaged with HOP principles. That's all very much part of this. So this is more about human than it is about tech. And I find that's the hardest part for me to translate to my audience is I'm not a tech guy from a background, but I understand the role that technology plays, but I understand the role that it plays to elevate humans in the workplace. So I think there's a real miscommunication or a knowledge lens that people have, that they think that just because I work predominantly with technology solutions that I don't have a focus on human, and it's the complete opposite.
Right.
So you start human first, and then you use the tech to augment that.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's a great point and great perspective. If we just zoom out for a minute, because I mean you're traveling and you're part of a lot of projects and research. What are the what are some of the big tech trends that you see coming down the pipe in 2024, 2025 that will impact or enhance health and safety within organizations?
Yeah, great question. And I'm glad you framed it in the terms of what are the trends, because that's an important differentiator between what are the technologies. So the individual technologies that are enabling better work in the next 36 months or so, you tell me. Like, it's the trend that's driving the change. So without being overly prepared for this chat, what I'm seeing is a shift to a real hyper personalization of experience, particularly as it relates to health and safety. So we do a lot of generic information and knowledge transfer about how we want to train or support workplaces or workers or teams to understand risk and how to work within the risk frameworks of our business. But it's very generic. The trends that we're seeing in technology, which leverage some of the systems like artificial intelligence technologies, mobility devices, so hyper personalizing those experiences. So if I like Google Pixel, I will use Google Pixel. If you like iPhone is your solution of choice. If you like Microsoft Surface, then we need to support you with that. So being really hyper personalized about the hardware that you use, and the content that we serve you up needs to be hyper personalized as well. So I'm currently working with solutions that can support real-time transition to give you information if you're dyslexic or if you have ADHD and you need a specific way that information is provided to you. I can personalize that in a really hyper personalized way in preferences that you need. So this hyper personalization of health and safety related content is happening. The mega trend that we're seeing as well is humans plus machines are better together, and that trend does talk to that hyper personalization. It also talks to the fact that we're trying to decouple or take away too much work for humans to do to generate data for the business to make decisions. So we're seeing data generation, so the way that we extract information from work, being more automated by sensors, by cameras, so that workers don't have to be the person entering all of the information. The last part is we're seeing a more human interaction with technology. So talking to the devices, this is not a natural way to interact with a device. We should be looking around, and we might be touching information in 3D space with our hands, but talking, interacting more naturally, that's the types of trends we're seeing. So hyper-personalization, humans plus machines better together, and a far more human interaction with technology. They're the big trends that we're seeing, and there's enabling technologies that support that. Network connectivity, we see a lot more low orbit satellite communication happening, so connectivity everywhere. We'll start to see the transition from 5G still over the next 36 months. Will be still not even anywhere near rolling out 5G globally, but we'll start to see the Wi-Fi protocols start to change. But connectivity will be better. Mobile devices will be more personalized, and we'll start to see a significant shift in the way that we interact with those systems.
Right.
So I want to touch on that personalization a little bit, because I feel like, and I don't know what the solution is to this. It just kind of came to mind, where if you're hyper personalizing how people interact with, let's say, some form of technology, or how they're gathering data, how do you keep it? Is data quality going to become an issue? And how do you keep that from being an issue if it's so personalized to so many different, the three of us or 300 of us could all have different ways that we want to interact with the information. If it's personalized 300 different ways, could you have issues with data quality?
So data quality is different to governance. So the governance framework is critically important.
Okay.
So one of the great international standards frameworks that's good to wrap your head around for this is the ISO 26000 social responsibility standard.
Okay.
And then the cybersecurity standards, which will sort of wrap around that. So that includes data quality. So you can't trust personalized recommendations if you don't understand the source material and the source material isn't robust. So personalization only happens once you have robust foundations. So in terms of where do you start to even be able to extract hyper-personalized or be able to even move down that pathway, there's some pretty clear steps of where to start, and certainly understanding the life cycle of data. So from how it's generated, how it's collected, how it's pre-processed, processed, stored, visualized, integrated, all of those. So that whole life cycle of data, that's foundational. And then from there, we can start determining how we personalize, how we contextualize and serve up that information. So absolutely. But the governance structure that sits around that, which includes privacy, ethics, and the strategic view of how we're going to use this stuff, that's it's the way that we have governance frameworks around critical risk controls. This is just another way to do that, but we just have to be more collaborative, because as health and safety practitioners and professionals, we're not meant to know the answers, but we do know governance, and we should know governance. So we can apply those principles to this kind of more data-driven future of health and safety.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think that my experience, and I was going to say the hyper personalization. I remember working with a company, and they were rolling out just time clock type devices to job sites, and they were all impressed because if you were left-handed and you swiped in, it knew you were left-handed, and it would reorient the screen. And that was kind of the level of personalization 20 plus years ago when I was working out in the field. But are you seeing like you talked about a more natural way to interact with technology? And I know one of the challenges has always been, safety professionals spending so much time collecting the data that they don't necessarily get to sit back, analyze and understand the data and look at predictive trends. So do you see technology enabling safety professionals more time to analyze the data, or are we not quite there yet?
Well, we're not at prediction, but we are at humans plus machines better together. So human in the loop, humans being served up information that they might not have been able to do, or they certainly wouldn't have been able to do on their own. I think the big key here is disparate data sets that we wouldn't normally consider looking together. So you might be working in a civil construction company, and there might be a basketball game that's happening towards the end. The whole city is converging on the stadium, which is changing the route of how concrete gets delivered. Those types of things, those things you never think of. You can get traffic data. You can even get the forecast of when the basketball games are playing. So you could say that on this Friday in June, I know I'm going to have issues with concrete delivery, which could mean that the setting time changes, which means that I'm going to have pressure put on the workforce, which means I'm going to it's this kind of stuff that means we're able to better understand these, unknown unknowns, or they'll actually become known factors.
Right.
So machines are supporting us to make sense of data that we wouldn't have normally been able to do, just because as humans, we don't have the capacity to do that. But at the moment, we're the architects of whether we have to think curiously and creatively about which data we need to start pulling together, because the machines will be able to do that in the future for us. But now we're the masters of the domain. We're the ones that get to choose. We're also therefore the ones that put significant bias in the system. So right now, to think that we're able to be really predictive means we're putting a lot of our own bias in the system. So we're being as predictive as we would do manually,
just faster.
Yeah. So which can, as you've just described them, might be a bit of a problem. The other thing is as you alluded to before, Gabe, the data quality isn't good. Historically, health and safety data is rubbish. Like, we collect a lot of rubbish. So I was listening to an interesting insurance related podcast about data analytics recently, where they were saying that you can heat map a very kind of surface level understanding of roughly, if I have more hours doing this type of manual job, I'm going to get more likely to have a back incident, a back musculoskeletal issue. Yeah, no, of course you are. But we're not at really nuanced and antecedent factors. We're not able to really understand all of those dynamic challenges, and we're also unable to do anything in real time because we're just not set up to do real time data management. So we're doing everything from latent data. So we're expecting that we know what happened in a confined space entry from a historical permit audit. We look at a permit audit and go, wow, all of those controls are in place and effective, from a piece of paper that or an electronic permit that happened 6 months ago. It's like, right. What was actually happening at the time? So we're not used to dealing with real-time data. Maintenance programs are. So predictive maintenance, they get a lot of real-time sensor-based information off equipment. And we've been able to do predictive maintenance for a long time. We're not able to do that with safety. Is it going to free up safety professionals' time? Not in the short term. It actually should be invested. We should be a lot more engaged with the data, and it probably is going to take a lot more time for us to crunch through. But the longer term prize, yes, safety professionals will be able to have far more nuance about being able to deal with the human side of people in the business and how they interact with each other, and let the disparate data sources and the machines to kind of figure out ways to give us contextual insight so we can hone our focus on what's important.
Right. Do you think, and it may be an obvious sort of question, but safety professionals' skill sets having to evolve maybe more rapidly than our schools and education systems and organizations are able to support?
Only in the specialist domain, only if you need to be a real specialist resource. The main skill or attribute that is needed is curiosity. I spoke at the NSC Congress at the end of last month, and the call to action was be curious. Be curious and build relationships. In our mindset and the thinking around being open to innovation and open to change is the biggest roadblock right now for health and safety practitioners and professionals. We don't celebrate curiosity as much as we should, and we don't foster that curiosity as much as we should. Curiosity is what's going to unlock the innovation, and curiosity is going to mean that we are quite clear about our knowledge gaps. At the moment, it's sort of a bit of a mess because it's too hard basket, or I don't feel competent or confident as an individual. And certainly the universities are trying to work off a very robust evidence base, and there isn't really a really robust evidence base in this domain. So the universities will always lag because they're not prepared to do something that isn't founded on really sound research, which is probably fair enough. But what we don't have is really an alternative, and without plugging too much. It's the reason why I started the company, right? The whole point of building the Safety Innovation Academy was because there is a gap between formal education and practical ability to actually get started doing this stuff. So there is a gap at the moment, but if you're curious, that's the starting point.
Today, we're proud to announce that this podcast is brought to you by Isometrics Lumina, the most modern ESG platform from the most trusted name in EH&S. Isometrics ESG software automates your greenhouse gas calculations across scopes 1, 2, and 3, and maintains content from multiple ESG standards and frameworks, enabling you to easily meet and disclose your requirements. From there, set your ESG objectives and track your progress with Lumina's intuitive dashboards. Visit isometrics.com to upgrade your ESG management and reporting.
Yeah, it feels like there needs to be that kind of safe space for people to be curious and test some of the long-founded data and practices and policies and procedures without being concerned, am I going to break something? Am I going to injure someone? Or could I lose my job or something like that? So if you have a place where you can be curious and almost like a sandbox and test it out there and then see, hey, this kind of works. Let me see if I can deploy this maybe in pieces in real time or in the real world, and then see how it goes from there. I think that's the best way to start to foster that innovation. But if people don't have that safe space or that sandbox to really be curious, it's going to get it'll just get squished after a while. People will not want to. If you get slapped every time you try to be curious and test something out, you're probably going to stop doing that going forward.
Yeah, there's a couple of, there's so many threads to pull there. First of all is the response to curiosity and creativity and trying to do something different is foundational. It's critical, and it is the reason why a lot of this stuff has got nothing to do with technology. It's all to do with our of trust and the human way of what we do. The second is one of the first things I do with the clients that I work with is we try to find a space that we can allow experimentation and demonstrate value to the business in a safe way. There's danger in having innovation hubs though, because innovation never leaves the hub because it's too much of a safe space and the business's posture isn't there to actually take risk. So we have to only establish those types of safe spaces with a really clear strategy of how we get out of there. How do we get it into the business? If we demonstrate value and we demonstrate a risk management strategy, let's get it into the business. Otherwise, why are we doing it?
Right.
Third one, and the use sandbox is really interesting. There is a thing called the regulatory sandbox. A lot of people will say, well, what is a regulator going to say about this? And obviously in the US and context will be, what is OSHA going to say? Like, does this meet regulatory requirements? Well, the Safety Tech Accelerator, which is based out of the UK, they have just been working with the UK regulator, the UK HSE, on the regulatory sandbox, which is basically a regulatory safe space to play to test emerging technologies to determine how can we, for health and safety specifically, about how these health and safety technologies can be managed and what are all of the challenges and what is the regulator's response in this sandbox environment so that they can then go to scale. So that philosophy is absolutely a great place to start, but it has to be done strategically. And there's nothing worse than an organization that says, we want to be more innovative, and then they innovate in a sandbox, which doesn't ever get seen the light of day, which is basically like, I'm innovating to look cool and to go to the market to say, look how amazing we are. And the workers basically go, it's a load of BS. We don't see any of that innovation, and we never see that. And they win awards, they win safety awards, they're up on stage talking about how amazing they are, but they actually are not able to be, they're actually not able to innovate at all, because they're basically just putting innovation over in a box and letting it stay there. So there's a significant danger if you don't do it in a more strategic manner.
Interesting.
That's actually a flashback to, before I even had the idea for Safeopedia, I was on the Construction Owners Association Safety Committee, and they were talking about how they're great at developing best practices, but they really suck at actually implementing them. and that was the big challenge, was everybody could get together and imagine best practices and write those big long documents describing how they should all work, but actually implementing them was a big challenge. And kind of circling back to something I think I heard you say earlier, is that it really needs to be integrated with operations in order to be successful in the long term. That this isn't safety tech for the safety tech, and it's not just supporting safety as a vertical within an organization, but it's how you integrate that with operations. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, and I think for those of you that have heard me speak, I always like to re-establish the definition of what is safety tech. Most people think of safety tech as the safety management system software, and they're often the ones that sponsor the talks and are talking about their solutions. So it's often what we see and hear and feel and think about safety tech. My definition in the Safety Innovation Academy is any technology that has the potential to improve the design, the experience, or the safety of work, or the safety of work. So the design, the experience, and the safety of work. If we start with any technology that improves the design of work, ultimately safety will be an outcome of that. So if you improve the design of work, both throughout the design, the planning, the execution, the continuous improvement, so the whole design of the way that work is sort of ideated and then executed in a business, if you use technology to improve that, then you're more than likely going to improve health and safety outcomes. If you use technology to improve the experience of the work, so is the work more delightful, is the work more engaging, is the work more fun, then you're more than likely going to have better health and safety outcomes, particularly psychological health and safety outcomes, because you'll feel engaged with work, you want to be at work. And then obviously technology that directly improves health and safety outcomes. So people and machine proximity, that is a very clear health and safety, or it's a sensor that means that I don't have to put my hand into a rotating piece of equipment. It's specifically cause and effect health and safety related. So any technology that has the potential to improve the design, experience, and safety of work, where safety is process safety, health, psychological health, safety, and well-being, a catch-all. That definition of technology means the air conditioning unit in my cab of my truck is a safety technology, because it's improving my conditions, my experience, and my ability to concentrate. So if we broaden that definition, then it means that our customer base is far broader. It's the whole business, and ops and maintenance are far more engaged, because they're like, I want that. I want anything that's going to improve my maintenance strategy. I'm in. So it's not just seen as, safety when they're looking to support these technology solutions, helping improve the way that work is performed, full stop. And that might be more efficient. It might be more productive, and ultimately better all around, safer, better. So tech for better work, ultimately.
Yeah, there was something with that too that you mentioned early on, even about being curious as a key part of innovation and advancement for safety professionals, and then now you're talking about broadening that definition of technology as to anything that's going to improve the quality of work. What I like about that too is that it's not hinging on how big of a company you work with or how big of a budget you have. You can find ways, even as a small company or even as an individual safety manager, like just an army of one, that you can build these things in yourself, of being curious or of looking at the quote unquote technology that is currently in your workplace. Not anything new that's being added, but see, how do you improve the quality of the work or that work experience? So, I mean, we talked early on, even before we started recording, about practical application of technology. And I think one of the barriers that a lot of people will have first is that when they see the price tag on, let's say, a new system or some sort of equipment, there's this immediate feeling of just, oh, well, we don't have the resources to apply that, or it's too expensive for us. But it sounds like a lot of this can really be applied even regardless of the size or the budget of the company. So what are some of the things that you've seen with the application of technology that has applied even to small to mid-sized businesses and workplaces that maybe don't have those multi-million-dollar budgets for safety initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, the answer to that question comes down to what's the problem that we're trying to solve. Most organizations jump straight to what technologies exist that I can use to try and improve my work. Well, first of or just to use, because hey, we need to use AI because everyone's using AI. So
right.
So I'll give you an example where you might not think that this is technology at all. But I was working in a library, and basically they were getting lots of musculoskeletal issues with reaching and bending down low and all this kind of stuff. But they were having a customer issue with where people were unable to read the spines of the labels. So it was and basically these people would come up and they would be a little bit of bullying kind of going on at the counter. Most of these people were volunteers as well, and it'd be like, I can't read the spine of the label and all this. And that was a challenge for the business. But the improvement strategy was improved lighting. Because by improving the lighting, and actually there was what they ended up doing as well was lowering all of the they lost a little bit of stock, but they lowered all of the counters so that you could see along. And we did the same thing in one of the key challenges in a supermarket. Exactly the same scenario was theft. And the reason why there was theft, because there was floor to ceiling racks, and one, it was a musculoskeletal challenge trying to fill those racks. The public couldn't access those shelves either, but because there was no visual line of sight, people felt that they could quite easily just take stuff because no one else could see them. So we lowered everything down. They consolidated their stock, which means that they had less manual handling. They had a far more consolidated stock line. There might not have been as many choices, but they were able to provide the choices that were the most common, and they could then have an ordering system that means that they could bring things on pretty quickly on demand. But most importantly is by lowering the size or the shelves, they reduced theft because they brought a more human connection into what was going on.
Oh wow.
Now you could argue that has nothing to do really with technology in the lighting sense or making bigger barcodes. It's a participative ergonomics approach. But the reason why I'm providing this analogy is what is the problem that you're trying to solve, and how do you think creatively about solving that problem, and where does technology fit into the mix? And technology is anything that can improve that work that is, not really human. So
Right.
I'm advocating for, if you improve the color temperature of the lighting to improve the mood, you've now gone and de-escalated the, or you have some tranquil music, or you put some plants in the office. These types of things are the types of experimentations, and because they then evolve to these more potentially complex and more digital forward solutions that do, start to, might be a sensor to look at air quality so that it turns on the air conditioning so that it's a far more comfortable environment when I first get into the workforce. So we might, for example, put a sensor into a workplace that 2 hours before regular office opening hours, the air conditioning kicks on, so that when you get in, it's at a really balanced temperature, but over the nighttime period, you're saving energy. So, and then I've now got a fiscal return, so a dollar return on investment. I'm meeting my sustainability policy objectives, and I'm improving comfort. Therefore, and I'm meeting all of these things, but I've been really clear on the problem, and I've sought out creative ways to solve the problem. So those types of examples are sort of really easy ways to do things. Now, specific gadgets, what could I use? I'm very cautious not to say a particular type of solution, because it really does depend on the context and the workplace, the posture, and their ability to adopt these things. So, it might be a very simple mobile application that does a particular function, or it could be a sensor, or it might be a robotic assistant. And in that library, for example, we had a counterbalanced digital scale that basically raised up and down based on a calibration of how many books were put on. You pop the book into the scanner, and it automatically had RFID capability and ultra wideband Bluetooth, so that I could determine where all the books were in the library. And as a total combination of lighting, sensors, some robotics, all together improved. Now, incrementally, if you looked at the totality of that, it was probably a reasonably expensive exercise when you looked at it. But the total experience of that library, and that library ended up winning awards for better design and all these things. There's many ways to start, and you don't have to have a significant budget. And I'm saying that something as simple as lighting is safety technology.
I love that too, because one of the things that I remember in one of my early experiences in getting into safety, and I'm more on the PPE side. And I remember I had a manufacturer come to my office and say, "Oh, we have some really neat new technology on this safety vest." I thought, okay, what is it? And I thought maybe it was going to be something like RFID or some sort of stuff like that. And they said, "No, we've added an extra pocket on the vest." And I thought, are you kidding me? Like that's the tech that you have now? But then the more they talked about it, I realized, okay, adding that pocket actually for the worker was a huge level of convenience. It was just the placement of it, the fact that there was more places to store things, was actually that, as you're saying now, that improvement of the work experience, even with something as simple and low tech as a pocket. And so I kind of poo-pooed that for a long time, but now realizing that, wow, that actually is a legitimate improvement, and an application of a technological solution, something as basic as a pocket, is super helpful. And then later on, when they announced that they had a new type of vest that had no pockets, I said, okay, well, I can't keep up with you guys. You're just innovating way too fast here. It's too much.
I'm not sure about the pocket, but I definitely think, something like a new, a good innovation from a technology standpoint in the PPE market, for example, was going for the thermoplastic toe on a steel cap boot, which drastically changed the comfort, the weight, the frustration of going in and out of airports, all of those things. Still in the US, you get to take your shoes off for everything, but in the real world, you get to go through the scanner and actually wear your shoes. But those kind of things, they are a technological solution, albeit at a nanomaterial, or so technology can be thought about in different ways.
Right.
But certainly there are very, maybe people are listening to this going, "You're loopy. This is going a little bit off." And sure, if we're looking at the data style of technology, then any organization can start with, what data do I need to generate to make better decisions, and how am I going to generate that data? Most organizations will go to mobile first, where they have access to, everybody has a mobile phone, smartphone ultimately, and how can we then start having low cost or free solutions that can help improve that? My Google Pixel, the buds right now can give me a very rudimentary level of hearing wellness. So whether or not I'm exposed over the duration, even outside of work, of how much I'm exposed, in this case, it's calibrated to 80 dBA, time weighted average, over the duration of an 8-hour day. And it will give me insight, and it's totally free. It's just, totally free in terms of, like, it costs what it costs for me to have my phone. So there are lightweight solutions that exist on the market that are low cost, no cost, that can get you started. But they all found on this data strategy that you need to look at first.
Yeah. One of the things that we're always interested in learning about and sharing is opportunities for safety professionals to advance their careers or expand their kind of career horizons. The library example that you gave, like you said, was, sounding more or bigger than just safety. It was sort of operations and efficiency and customer satisfaction and all those different aspects. So just wondering if you could kind of touch on some opportunities maybe that you've seen safety professionals, embrace and excel at, because they were curious and open-minded and exploring, different technology solutions for their organizations.
Yeah, so the human-centered design philosophies and customer experience and service design is where health and safety professionals can excel without even realizing they're good at it. So this whole concept of work as imagined, work as versus work as done, being operationally curious, understanding work as it's performed, those types of things are where health and safety practitioners can unlock significant value for an enterprise. We talked about hyper-personalization, and particularly when we're coming to hyper-personalization through the use of the artificial intelligence solutions that exist. So leveraging natural language processing for language context or real-time language translation, those types of things, hyper-personalized. What a health and safety practitioner can do is effectively understand the personas of the business, develop a service blueprint. How do we interact, or how do we do activities at work? And what do each of the personas within our business need, or what is their profile? So, for example, a subcontractor that is only on your site for 1 hour a month, they would have a persona. They would have basically a background and you could a typical kind of example of that type of profile, that user profile. An employee that works in finance in a business will have a particular type of profile. They might like working with numbers. They might like very strong governance. An engineer might like very planned and methodical, or they might like to work with three-dimensional data. You might then have a trainee that works in your business who has a different type of persona. You might have neurotypical or a Spanish-speaking workforce, or you might even employ people with physical or cognitive disability, or different types of user profiles that will be in your business. Health and safety practitioners are great at being able to understand those different user profiles and creating a persona for them, for the business to then feed into their systems in the future to be able to support hyper-personalization and to be able to support a far better experience. Those personas can be provided to technology vendors to better create solutions that support the needs of the actual business. So there's a no technology way to get started to then really help improve the way that technology can be brought into the business and be really sustainable and effective.
I think that goes back to your original point of even understanding the problem that you're trying to solve. If you understand the people that are working in your organization and how the organization runs, that is part of determining the issues that need resolution. So before you, as you said, before you jump into the newest, shiniest, coolest thing that people are talking about, well, start to see first, do you actually need to deploy that, or is it actually going to could it possibly even make the problem worse? If you understand what it is you're trying to solve by understanding the workers that are there, and as you said, even like those personas, those profiles, just having an understanding of the business and of the workers, I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean with the work that I do in my consulting practice, typically what we start with is we look at a framework of how we transform from a digital transformation for safety. So we normally would start with a current state analysis, which is exactly that. So what is the state of health and safety management system and leadership and trust? What is the current state of technology in terms of its adoption? Like, what do people think about technology? How much do they use it at home? How much do they use it at work? What's their sentiment related to that? What are their preferences? But then the next is, what is a vision? So, it's all well and good saying, well, this is current stock, but like, where are we heading? And what is the North Star for the business? And then you might have a really visionary organization and a very old school or rigid and hierarchical, structure and embedded practices. And there might be quite a disconnect between the vision state and the current state. Therefore, the ability to get there is going to be quite significant. So getting a clear understanding of what it is that where you are and where you want to get to. And we haven't talked technology at all. Like,
right.
That's nothing to do with technology. Once you understand that, and then you get really clear on then what are the problems and what is our vision to solve these types of problems, then you can start exploring the technology solutions. Which is why when you say, what are some examples, it's like, it's kind of not relevant if I give you an example. I can give you an example, but it's not necessarily going to be helpful takeaway for people listening to this webinar, because it might not be contextually relevant at all for them, and it might not suit their vision, and it might not suit where they're at. Now, some organizations can't, they're paralyzed to get into technology enablement because they haven't worked on the foundations, typically with our trust and leadership. So you may need to spend a lot more time there, and it might take several months, weeks, days, years to get prepared to be able to change. So that change inertia, and there might be a bunch of other change going in the business. So that change fatigue or the paralysis that people have means that, without that current state analysis, future state vision, and understanding of that linkage between those two. Yeah, but the role of the safety professional is, to me, very clear. But to safety professionals, I don't think it's clear at all. They're like, what am I supposed to do? How do I get started? So that's, there's an element of boosting your digital literacy to feel a little bit confident. But I don't think that it's, you need a lot to be able to realize that you've got a huge role to play in the preparation and the change management and the understanding of how to determine whether these things will be successful or not. Because the technology teams aren't doing that. They're not doing that at all. And the highly, highly paid consultants are, but they're just basically trying to jam their approach to your business because they've got a playbook. And but I think there's a lot that we can do to get started.
That's really, really good advice. And I think that in our travels, we hear safety professionals being frustrated that they kind of get shut down before the conversation gets going about exploring or implementing new technology. But it's probably because they're jumping ahead to the buy decision without doing that fundamental groundwork in order to kind of articulate the message and the value that they probably intuitively see, in their heads, but have difficulty describing or convincing the rest of the organization that it's the right thing to do at that time. So,
well, that was one of the reasons why even Scott, like we went and started Safeonomics, because there was this intersection that we saw between safety and business, and trying to see how do you bridge that gap and what is the role of the safety professional in that. And really what it comes down to, I think, is that a safety professional is in a great position to be a translator for multiple areas of business, from the C-suite to the line worker to regulatory bodies. They're in a great spot that you can jump to any of those and learn to really understand how the business works, because you have access to so many different areas of the company. And then you can build trust in all those different ways. So then when someone comes in and says, we're going to deploy AI in this company, it's the safety professional can step back and say, wait a second, I understand the problems that are going on right now. Maybe this isn't the right tool to deploy, but let's look at how people are actually working, and then start to be that voice of reality, in a sense, between all the different functional areas in the organization. So I love that we started the conversation talking about even curiosity. And I think that that's a huge superpower for a lot of safety professionals, to be able to be curious about how management runs things. How does a welder do their job? And can you communicate that between those two very opposite ends of the spectrum within your organization? I think that's really where you start to be able to pool those bits of information and come up with that answer, or come up with that definition of what is the problem we are actually trying to solve. And then if the safety professional is bringing that up, they are in a much better position to actually implement those, the correct tool, and actually get some real world results by implementing those.
Yeah, and if you go to the concept of Safeonomics, is that it?
Yes.
And you're wanting to, which is, in my mind, it's about how do you demonstrate the value.
Right.
The value proposition is how well you can architect a solution to solve a problem. Now, a lot of the time that you're trying to demonstrate return on investment for safety technologies is dollar return on investment. So how much money, how much time, how much can I save or how much is that dollar return on investment going to be? But if the problem is how do I validate the quality of a weld, which is going to improve the psychological safety of that, the psych health and safety of that welder, because they now know that there's a technology solution that's validating the quality of their weld, so that in the future, they're not going to be the ones that are held culpable for the issue, because they're getting real-time contextual information. So that weld quality is done, sealed, and delivered before they leave, so that they can fix something in situ if needed. Something like weld quality, something like if I go and implement a $1 million software solution, the metrics might be, well, how often is it used?
Right.
The return on investment will be an engagement metric, like how often is that technology actually used? It might be how much of a percentage of my risk information is real time. It might be how often how often or in what format or in what context can a supervisor have a safety interaction in real time, because they've been facilitated with a platform to do that. Those types of trade-offs, or they might not actually be specifically linked to a dollar return, will be a value return for the business. So I believe that technology has the ability for us to scale our impact and scale our value proposition, but we have to be solving a clear problem. Right. So if we can articulate the problem and we can demonstrate how we're making sense and solving that problem in a more meaningful way for a business, then we can basically look at that economic value proposition and say back, we actually, we're providing value to the business.
So hopefully everybody listening is listening with curiosity and taking a few key points away. I don't think an hour with Cam is enough time to really dig into everything that we'd like to, and I'm sure listeners would like to dig into. So, Cam, maybe we can wrap things up by you sharing a little bit about the Safety Innovation Academy that you mentioned early on, and what, how do people connect with you and learn more from your lessons.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, look, so I'm full-time in this space. It's all I do. I love it, and I like helping organizations succeed in this space. It's effectively two ways, or a few ways, that you can connect with me. One, obviously, is on LinkedIn. The second is camstevens.au, which is my independent voice of being that trusted voice in safety tech. Keynote presentations, helping organizations with that thought leadership to get started and move forward. And then the Safety Innovation Academy is effectively starting to grow. We offer courses to support organizations to improve their digital literacy. We have a 6-part digital safety transformation series for large organizations, and we have a series of courses that we're soon to be released. I'm hoping that over 24 we have a really decent roadmap of courses and educational content. Foundations of artificial intelligence for health and safety, for example, how to be operationally curious, how to design service blueprints, how to develop persona maps, all of these how to get started things. So yeah, I work globally with organizations through the Innovation Academy and through my consulting practice, Pocket Knife Group. Happy to have a chat. So connect with me on LinkedIn, and hopefully we can do some work together.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate your time, and I know we had some struggles lining up a time that worked for everybody. So I'm glad we could finally get this in the calendar. And yeah, really have enjoyed watching your journey, and again, really appreciate you taking the time to speak with Gabe and I today.
Thanks for the opportunity, gents. Take care. Have a good evening, and I will go and have a coffee because it's morning here.
Sounds good. Thanks, Cam.
Catch ya. Bye now.
See ya.
Hey, thank you for listening to today's podcast. Really appreciate your time and attention. And just want to give a special shout out to Isometrics, our sponsor of today's podcast. If you're looking for ESG software or EH&S software, please visit isometrics.com. Thank you.